We talk about altitude, we also need to consider equator. So how close is that country or that farm to the equator? The closer we are to equator, obviously we have more warmer temperatures. That means that we need to go higher in the altitude. So if we are very close to the equator, coffees like Colombia, we would need to go on really extreme high altitudes in order to be able to have these cooler nights in these extreme elevations. However, if we are in Brazil at significantly lower altitudes, we can have very, very similar temperatures. For example, 1200 meters in Brazil would be pretty much the same as 1800 meters in Colombia. They will have very similar microclimates and very similar conditions. So we always need to consider not only the altitude, but how close we are to equator, and also the closer we are to equator, the higher we need to go. The reason why is coffee tree obviously is grown on a tropical belt, but what's really important is that coffee tree likes to have a bit of a struggle. The more struggle coffee trees have, the deeper the roots will go to collect the nutrients, the slower coffee tree will grow, and all of this will affect on a very slow maturation. As an example, on our farm in Iris Estate, our farm starts at 1800 meters and goes all the way to 2300 meters. We planted pretty much in the same year coffee geisha tree on 1900 meters and 2200 meters. But when we walk on a farm and 1900 meters tree are established, they're pretty tall. There's still coffee fruits after 4 or 5 years. However, on 2200 meters, these trees are still tiny. So these coffee trees will take a lot longer to mature, and also when they mature, they will take a lot longer to ripen, from flowering to perfect red cherry. And the reason why is because during the night, the coffee cherries will not ripen. They will, with the cooler temperatures, they'll just stay where they are. And then as soon as we have a sun and temperatures rises, ripening will continue. So instead of having a ripening from flowering to the cherry maybe 6 or 7 months, on these extreme elevation farms, ripening can be up to 9 months. And this is another 3 months extra of building the flavors, building the characters, acids, so we can have this extreme condition and extreme flavor bomb coffees. So consistency for blend roasting requires so many different steps. I think first of all, before we even look on a farm level on how we roast coffee is what do we want to achieve out of this blend? And to have a lot of clarity exactly how we want this coffee to taste. If it's a classic house blend, yes, we want chocolatey notes, what sort of character of the chocolates, how much body, how much sweetness, and also what sort of ratio that blend should work with particular milk that we're working. So we need to understand that we actually blending not only the coffee beans, but we're blending that coffee with the milk. And not only blending with a particular milk, but with the ratio of the milk. So we kind of got to come up with these formulas to see how everything is going to end, what flavor profile we're going to have all the way at the end. And of course, the first step will go back to the farm. We'll go to see where we can find these components to achieve these characters. We always would use particular coffee to provide a body, sweetness. If it's a fruit-driven coffee, we'll have some of the heavier fermented carbonic maceration, possibly, or anaerobic, supernatural coffees to bring these certain flavor characters like purple or red fruits. But also, if we wish to refine that flavor profile, then we'll add some of the coffees that are very clean, that have a high acid, in order to allow to bring out these fruits forward and to make them a bit more clean and rounder. So we don't necessarily decide how many coffees we're gonna have in a blend. It starts off with that perfect goal, what do we want to achieve, and understanding what components, what coffees, what process we should have in a mix. But more importantly, and I guess the most difficult thing in a blending is how to keep that consistency. And consistency is kept, and it starts at farm level. It starts with the understanding how well that coffee is processed, how well that coffee is dried. It also starts with doing quality control for all of these coffees, tasting them every 3 months and see if we are maintaining the flavor in our warehouse or if flavor drops. If flavor drops a little bit early, we can talk to our farmers so we can improve the systems to extend and to improve the drying process. So following time and following year, the consistency of that coffee will stay for longer. Of course, it's seasonality as well. We are lucky enough that we have so many amazing coffees from all over the world with different seasons. So we can create particular flavor profile in Central America, January, February harvest. And that similar flavor profile we can also create in Peru, where harvest is in June and July. So we try to use for that same flavor profile coffees from different countries with the different harvesters to have that in mind, so we actually always have that sort of fresh. And of course, on a weekly basis, on a daily basis, it's components and the percentages in a blend. That's something we do is a quality control, because sometimes having a 1% of particular coffee, 30%, and if it's not quite enough body, we might increase that percentage to improve the body. So it's ongoing chase. There's a yearly chase, 6 monthly chase, and also weekly and daily chase to keep that consistency. Well, of course, coffee farmers running the coffee shops, it's amazing. You know, like in my experience, I've visited so many coffee farms where coffee farmers have not tasted a coffee. Like one of the reasons Project Origin started is when I got inspired in India, is the manager worked on that farm for 40 years, never tasted a coffee from his farm, and I found it quite shocking and disturbing. And I feel that if coffee farmers understand, you know, the coffee, the roasting process, as well, they can interact with the coffee shops on their own scale. Like it's going to add in a greater value for so many reasons. First of all, they'll actually understand their product so much better. Secondly, they'll be able to not only make the profits and margins on the farm level, but as well as the roasting level, as well as the cafe level. And they'll be, you know, most importantly, connect with so many different people, clientele, and, you know, help us to, you know, make specialty coffee as successful and as also as big and inviting for everyone, including the producing countries too. So the first step I would do, if there's information about the coffee on the bag, I would look at where coffee comes from, what country, varietal, process. For example, process is really important, because if we are working with the wash process coffees or very heavy anaerobic fermentation coffees, I would straight away start considering the grind profile. If we have a really heavy fermented coffee, we know that these coffees have a lot of heavy flavors and that we don't necessarily like, and also they have some of the amazing flavors. So by grinding a little bit coarser these coffees, we're gonna be able to attract a lot more fruity characters out of these coffees, flavors that we like, and avoid the ones that we don't like, so we don't grind as finer. But one of the, for me, really important steps is obviously looking at the roast profile, opening up the bag and seeing the color of the coffee. If coffee tends to be a little bit darker, I'd look at dropping the temperature of the brewing water, and if color seems like a usually typical lighter roast profile, then we can look at the temperature to be increased. If coffee is wash process, I would tend to have a little bit higher dose to start off with a lighter roast profile, just to get a little bit more body, because wash coffees tend to have a great flavor, great acidity, and sometimes they lack body, so that would sort of help to balance that. Or other way around, if coffee is really, you know, big and heavy fermented, possibly a little bit darker roast, I'd look at dropping the dose to provide some more clarity, to highlight the acidity. In some instances, when I don't actually know anything about the coffee, I would use my little density tube that comes with a Lean coffee roaster, and this really can tell me what density do we have and what sort of brewing device I should be using. So that kind of gives me the starting, do we use a switch, do we use a typical pour over, or other brewing method. And also sometimes I would look at using the color track to understand what the color of the roast is, to be able to determine these things and to be, I guess, a lot more specific. So there are some of the steps.
So coffee drying curve and how it is related to water activity.
So when we dry coffee, there are two things that are very important. Obviously, the moisture of the coffee, whether it's 10%, 11%, or 12% moisture when coffee is dried. For me personally, 11% is the target. And also we need to look at the water activity. 0.55 is where we would like our water activity to be ideally. But sometimes we will have coffee at 11% moisture and water activity might be 65, 67, 69. This means that our coffee will age a lot faster than what it would if we have 11% moisture and 0.55 water activity. But where do we have this problem? So why do we have these issues? So when we pick the coffee cherry from the tree, it has 55% of the moisture. Our goal and our target is to bring it to 11. Sometimes in some countries during the day it can be really hot, so our coffee will dry from 55 possibly in one day to 40, following day to maybe 35. However, in the countries where we have a very high humidity, during the night the humidity usually rises, we might have rains, we might have conditions where there's a lot of water in the environment. So during the night what's going to happen if we drop down the moisture to 35%, following day when we measure the moisture of that coffee, it will come up to 40. And then it will drop to 32 and then it will come up. So these are the things that we do want to avoid, because we don't want moisture to be coming inside of the beans for two reasons. Number one, we'll damage the flavor of the coffee, and secondly, we will have water activities that are not desirable, that are high, which will affect how well these coffees will age. And it also can make the coffees very moldy during the drying process because we have too many of these water activities. To avoid these things in countries like Honduras or Colombia or so many other countries where humidity is really high, we can use the fans, we can use protected green rooms, possibly even the way to extract the humidity outside of the environment, dehumidifiers. So there are options to avoid that. To select coffee for competition, whether it's a brewers competition or barista comp, each one of us will have a little bit different approach. So I think the most important start, and the question is, why do we want to compete? What is it that we want to add? What coffees or what trends or what connects us with the competition, and what coffees can really celebrate that in the best possible way? For me, it always starts on a farm level. So many of you would know that it always starts with the fermentation and also doing the fermentation to help me with the score sheet. Early last year when I competed in my Brewers Cup, the first step what I've done is obviously I went to the farm and worked with Jamison on our farm, our estate, to tailor the fermentation style to suit the Brewers Cup score sheet. As you know, aroma and flavors are very important in the Brewers Cup score sheet, so we've done the extended fermentation as much as we possibly could to bring these fruit flavor characters as much as possible. But we've also added particular inoculations in the coffee to lactobacillus to help to balance the coffee, to give us the body that is amazing. Obviously, body is a multiplier, and it's very important that we have a really high score for these coffees, especially when temperature cools down. Selecting coffee for high elevations will help to give us that really high quality acidity, which is also another multiplier. And then brewing device that suits that coffee, which obviously is water, etc. I feel one of the main reasons why I came back to compete is to showcase some of the innovations I have been working with on a farm level as well as on a brewing level with the Paragon, and few techniques that I believe have helped to elevate that coffee experience a lot more and helped us to enhance these flavors and aromas of that particular coffee. But yeah, to leave you with the last word is we all have different parts how we're going to choose the coffee and what we're going to focus more on. And the answer is simple. What you're focusing more on is kind of going to be more on why do you like coffee and why do you enjoy it so much. Because when you spend so much time on something that you love, you'll have the potential to create something new and to actually innovate and have a greater value out of that coffee. I'd love to answer a little bit different question, because I don't necessarily spend a lot of time studying on what are the coffee trends, what's happening in the world, and predicting what can really be the coffee trend in 1 year or 2 years. Maybe I can answer what are my trends and what is it that I'm particularly interested in, and possibly what is it that I would love to see to evolve. Last couple of years I have been extremely passionate about coffee species, going from the coffee process to the varietals, and then making that step back and understanding there's so many amazing coffee species. I've overlooked some of the species for many years that, maybe being a little bit, ignorant on so many things. For so many years I did not want to taste Liberica because someone told me, people told me this is not great variety or great species. So I've kind of completely opened up my mind and accepted and challenged myself and the team around myself as well to find the best value out of this so many amazing species. There's 124 of them, and it's super exciting to be able to explore them. So we have been involved in that. We've done so many projects in quite a few different countries, and looking forward to seeing more and more species involved. So I hope that becomes a trend. And also last couple of years I have been involved a lot in learning the science about the coffee, collaborating with the experts in the field of coffee, scientists, and working with them and really learning their world. And the more that pushed me to understand the world of science has helped me to become better barista and to also bring some of the ideas and innovations to the world of coffee throughout that approach. So I do hope that, and I can see that we will be collaborating with industries or collaborating with the coffee scientists a lot more in the future, so we can make better decisions and get more flavor out of the coffee and make more consistency out of the coffee as well. So I think most important step is to actually have the experience in the coffee industry. So if you wish to open up a coffee shop, I would highly encourage you to really understand what it takes to be a barista in that cafe, or to be a floor person, to wash dishes, and to also understand as much as possible back of the house. So it's an experience. I would not encourage anyone that does not have that at least 3 or 4 or 5 years industry experience to open up the cafe, because not necessarily because you might not be able to learn, but more importantly you might really learn that you actually don't want to do this. You're not connected with it. It sounds so great on the surface. I'd love to have a coffee shop, but without really understanding what it takes to have a coffee shop, you don't know whether you connect with it. But once you feel that you're 100% connected, and once you also feel that yes, I have had this experience and this is so exciting, then do it. Don't wait for tomorrow. Do it. Start small. Start today. You will make mistakes, but the moment you make mistake, it's not a mistake. It's your learning opportunity to be better. But whenever you make that mistake, assess. Surround yourself with the people. Talk, discuss, and come up with the understanding, well, this is why I made a mistake. And once you know the reasons why you made a mistake, well, come up with a solution and the system, as we call it, better structure, how to run your cafe, so that doesn't happen again. And that's something that I've been in a cafe industry since 2003 actually, and we're still learning every day. But the beauty is, every time when we make a mistake, we go, well, this is what's happened. This is how we're going to implement new system, and we try to turn that weakness into our strength, and on and on and on. So start today if you're committed to it. The reason decaf coffee after roasting is darker, and also long fermented coffee is roasted darker, it's pretty separate. So we'll talk firstly one and then the other one. Decaf coffee is when the process is done, after the decaffeination process is completed, that coffee is dried very fast. It's dried at very high temperatures, 40, 45, 50, 55 degrees, and within a couple of the days that coffee is completely dried to 11%. So a lot of decaf coffee would have issue with water activity because they've just completely dried it. And when I mentioned earlier in one of my questions is, when we have a very inconsistent drying and very fast drying, we will have problems with water activity. When we have problems with water activity, coffee will age faster. And that means that the oils of the coffee will come out on the surface a lot more, so it sort of looks a lot darker. So with decaf, it's important to order it, it's as little as you can, to have from your green bean, buyers, to have these coffees to be shipped as fast as possible, and this will help you to sort of manage that as much as possible, because normally the age of decaf coffee is like 2-3 times faster than what would be in the other coffees. With the heavy fermented coffees, when we have these really long fermentations, we do need to know that the heavier we ferment coffees, these coffee beans will change in the color, will also change in the appearance, and with really heavy fermented coffees, some of the beans will have a little bit of damage. So when they are milling coffees that are processed or fermented for 10, 15, 20 days plus, the percentage of these coffee beans, of how many of them are damaged, is significantly higher than what it is when we have wash processed coffees. So when we have slightly damaged cells in there, of course, yes, we are going to get some unique, some different flavors, but we also need to be careful how we're roasting these coffees. So they need to be roasted completely different than any other coffee, because if we apply a lot of heat and if we apply longer roast profiles and longer end degrees, the oils will come on the surface of these coffees. They will also look darker. They will not age as well. So it's more to do with the management of the roaster, how to make sure that these coffee beans do not have these oils coming on the surface. Another reason why they look a little bit darker is because the green bean looks darker. And the reason green bean looks darker, as I mentioned, is because we have fermented these coffees to the extreme points that some of them are like going from green bean to yellow to even brown colors. So when we roast them, naturally they will look a lot more darker than what typical green